If you've ever felt that disconnect between your morning meditation and your business operations, or found yourself caught in reaction mode rather than creating with intention, today's episode is for you. I'll be sharing the 5 spiritual principles that have allowed me to create a business that doesn't just reflect my spiritual values, but actually deepens them, where my workday becomes a moving meditation rather than a source of stress. Now, these aren't just philosophical concepts, they're practical approaches that have helped me and countless women I've mentored to create businesses that feel both spiritually aligned and profitable and impactful. So, if you're ready to transform your relationship with your business and discover how your work can become a vehicle for your spiritual growth, stay tuned. Welcome to Herself, a space for women to have deep conversations about the intersection between spiritual entrepreneurship and fulfilling your potential, so you can become the woman you truly are in every area of your life. After being in business for over 2 decades, I've learned, as you likely have too, that as you grow your business grows you in unexpected, often challenging, yet miraculous ways. Here, we'll talk about how to get out of your own way so you can grow a business that's abundant and sustainable while allowing you to be a force for good in the world. I'll give you simple, actionable strategies as well as wisdom and inspiration to help you root into your wholeness, lead from your values, and work in ways that feel deeply aligned so you can bring your true self into the world through your business and in every area of your life. Hello, beautiful women, and welcome back to Herself. I am grateful to be gathering with you again here today. And before we get started, I wanted to check in with you for a little bit of a temperature check. And I want to ask you, how are you feeling about your business right now? Are you experiencing a sense of alignment and flow? Is your work nourishing your spirit? Or does it sometimes feel like your business and your spiritual practice exist in 2 separate worlds? Now, I've been reflecting on this a lot lately, this dance between running a successful business and honoring our spiritual path. Because let's be real here, the world feels more chaotic right now than ever. Constant change, uncertainty, endless distractions pulling at our attention, news cycles fueling anxiety to all-time heights, social media demanding and draining our energy, and throughout, there's this relentless pressure to keep up. I'm feeling it. I know that you're feeling it too. And with all this happening, it is so easy to find ourselves in reaction mode, constantly putting out fires instead of creating with intention. And I know this is happening with so many of the women that I'm working with now. I would say even all the women I'm working with now. And yes, I find it in my own business too. We start our day with these beautiful intentions, perhaps with a morning meditation or a journaling practice. And then we open our laptops or we take out our phones, and suddenly it's as if we stepped into an entirely different reality. But what if it didn't have to be this way? What if your business wasn't just a to-do list, but it was actually your spiritual path? In my own life recently, I have been taking a lot of intentional time and space to do some restructuring and reimagining of how I want my day-to-day life to be, including my workday, so it can feel like more of a spiritual retreat. Because I know that the world right now needs me to be at my best. And if I'm ping-ponging around and in a constant stress response, that's not going to happen. So this question of how to make our workday a part of our spiritual path has really been at the heart of my own evolution over the past 2 decades. I've experienced burnout multiple times. I've felt that painful disconnect between my spiritual values and my business operations. And all of this, at a certain point along the way, led me to start exploring a different approach altogether. And what I discovered fundamentally changed my relationship with my work. it transformed my business from something I had to manage into a powerful vehicle for my spiritual growth and awakening. And this isn't something that I learned from anyone in particular. It's something that my own trial and error, painful trial and error, revealed to me over time. So today I want to share with you 5 spiritual principles that have become the foundation of how I run my business. And these aren't just nice ideas or philosophical concepts, but they're genuinely practical approaches that have allowed me to create and offer a body of work that feels both spiritually aligned and is profitable and truly does change lives. Now, I'm not suggesting that implementing these principles will suddenly make everything perfect. Absolutely not. Running a business will always bring challenges. Life will never be problem-free. But these problems have transformed those challenges from energy draining obstacles into openings and opportunities for deeper presence and growth. So whether you're feeling overwhelmed by the day-to-day demands of your business, or you're simply sensing there could be a more integrated way to approach your work, I hope these principles offer some fresh perspective and possibility for you. Okay, you ready to get started? Here is the first principle. Principle number 1, sacred presence over perpetual productivity. So in this first principle, it's about choosing sacred presence over perpetual productivity. Now, I know that might sound counterintuitive in a business context. We are constantly told that productivity is the ultimate measure of success. More tasks completed, more clients served, more content created, more revenue generated. But what I've discovered is that this relentless focus on doing more actually undermines both our spiritual well-being and our day-to-day effectiveness in our work. Because when we're constantly in productive mode, rushing from task to task, measuring our worth by how many items we check off our to-do list, we lose our connection to the deeper purpose behind our work. We sacrifice quality for quantity. We miss creative insights that only come in moments of spaciousness. Grace can only enter when there is room. And perhaps more importantly, we deplete our most precious resource, which is our own energy and our own presence. And I experienced this acutely a few years ago when I was rebuilding my business. In the past, I had set ambitious goals and created elaborate systems, and I was pushing myself to implement things. I was often productive by conventional standards, but I felt increasingly disconnected from myself because the more I accomplished, the less fulfilling it felt. So when I started rebuilding, I began experimenting with a radical alternative. And I said, well, okay, Sarah, what if I measure my business success not by how much I accomplish, but by the quality of presence I bring to each task and by the quality of the energy and fulfillment that I feel as a result of that? And I said, well, what if completing 3 tasks with full attention was more valuable than racing through 10 with a divided focus? And I started approaching each aspect of my business, from writing emails to creating content to recording this podcast episode to having client calls, as opportunities for practicing presence rather than just racing through another item to complete. And I'm not going to say that I always do this perfectly. Sometimes life is just busy and moves quickly. But this has been my overarching intention. And here's what surprised me. Not only does this approach make me feel more nourished, it's actually improved my business results. Like, my content resonates more deeply. My client interactions have become more transformative. My decision-making has become clearer and more intuitive. And this doesn't mean I abandoned planning or structure, quite the opposite. But the foundation shifted from how much can I get done to how fully can I show up for each aspect of my work. So how might you begin applying this principle in your own business? Well, start by simply noticing. Where are you sacrificing presence for productivity? Which aspects of your business do you rush through, thinking of them as tasks to complete rather than opportunities for presence? And you might also experiment with bringing a short moment of centered awareness before transitioning between activities. 3 conscious breaths before opening your email, or even 1 conscious breath before joining a client call, before opening up that blank Google Doc to write your blog post can completely shift the energy that you bring. And this isn't just about adding more to your plate. It's about bringing a different quality of attention to what you're already doing. It's choosing depth over breadth, quality over quantity, presence over perpetual motion. And what I found is that when we approach our business this way, the traditional boundaries between, quote, spiritual practice and business activity begin to dissolve. Your business becomes not something separate from your spiritual path, but actually an extension of it, a vehicle for bringing your most present awakened self into everything that you do. Now, the second spiritual principle that's transformed my business approach is embracing cyclical rhythms instead of demanding constant linear progress. Our conventional business culture is obsessed with linear growth. Every quarter should be bigger than the last. Every launch should reach more people. Every year should bring more revenue, more followers, more everything. It's always up and to the right on the graph. But when we look at the natural world, which I believe holds so much wisdom for us, we see that nothing, absolutely nothing in nature grows linearly. Everything moves in cycles. Trees do not grow taller every single day. They have seasons of expansion, seasons of fruiting, and seasons of rest and renewal. We women especially have an innate understanding of cyclical energy through our own bodies. Yet somehow we've been conditioned to override these natural rhythms when it comes to our businesses. So I remember when I first started implementing this principle, it felt almost rebellious. I was working with a business coach who was pushing me to maintain the same high output every week, regardless of where I was in my cycle, what season it was, what else was happening in my life. And something in me just kept resisting this approach, not because I didn't want to grow my business, but because it felt fundamentally out of alignment with how I understood nature and wisdom to operate. So I began experimenting with a different approach. And this was before, aligning your business with your cycles became a thing. And instead of fighting against my natural rhythms, I started designing my business to work with them. And this meant recognizing that there would be times of intensive creation and output, followed by necessary periods of rest and integration, times of external visibility and connection, and balanced by times of turning inward to really refill my well. And today that looks like, I'm really out in the world 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday through Monday, I'm in much more of like a retreat space. I'm not on email. I'm not on social media. I am not interacting with clients or team. I'm taking that space for myself. And then, of course, other times of the year, I take up to 4 or 5 weeks off at a time. So I started aligning my business planning with natural cycles, the seasons of the year, the phases of the moon, and yes, my own hormonal cycles. And I plan launches as much as I can during high energy times, and I schedule integration and planning during quieter phases. And when I did this, I was able to see that I was able to have a business that's much more sustainable and organic. So the key insight is that rest and receptivity aren't the opposite of productivity. They're actually an essential part of the creative cycle. Just like a field needs to lie fallow sometimes to restore its fertility, we need periods of apparent, quote, non-productivity to nurture our most powerful ideas and contributions. So let me turn it around to you. How might you begin applying cyclical wisdom to your own business? Start by observing your own natural rhythms. When do you naturally have more energy for creation, for connection, for implementation? When do you notice yourself needing more rest and integration time? And consider how you might integrate that into the structure of your work day, your work week, your work year. Our businesses are not machines that run at the same pace every day. They are living organisms that breathe, that expand, that contract, and evolve in harmony with their greater rhythms of life. Now, the third spiritual principle that guides my business is prioritizing inner wisdom over external validation. And in today's hyper-connected, business landscape, we are constantly bombarded with other people's metrics for success: social media followers, revenue goals, launch strategies, marketing tactics. There's really an endless stream of advice about what you should be doing to grow your business. And while there's certainly value in learning from others, and of course I teach others, I found that this external focus alone can quickly disconnect us from our most powerful business and life asset, which is our own inner guidance system. So here I aim for everything that I do to lead you back to your own inner knowing. Because when we're constantly looking outside ourselves for validation, approval, direction, we often override the quiet voice of our intuition and our deeper knowing. We make decisions based on what others are doing rather than what's truly aligned for us. So how might you begin bringing this principle into your own business? Well, you can start by creating space to listen to your inner wisdom before making big decisions. And this might be through meditation, journaling, movement, time in nature, just whatever helps you connect with your deeper knowing. And you also want to practice distinguishing between the voice of fear or comparison and the voice of your true self. Remember, fear tends to be constricting, urgent, reactive. Wisdom tends to be expansive, calm, and clear, even when it's guiding you toward a potentially challenging growth point. And you might also experiment with making one small business decision purely from your inner guidance, even if it doesn't seem to follow conventional wisdom. Notice how it feels to act from this place and what results it creates. So when we build our businesses from the inside out, letting our deepest wisdom guide our strategy rather than the other way around, something pretty remarkable happens. Our work becomes not just something we do, but a true expression of who we are and even why we're here. It becomes a vehicle for bringing our unique gifts into the world in the most authentic way possible. And paradoxically, by focusing less on external measures of success and more on internal alignment, we often create businesses that are both more fulfilling and more prosperous. Because true alignment has a magnetic quality that attracts exactly what and who we are meant to serve. Now, the fourth spiritual principle that has transformed my business is understanding that sacred boundaries are in and of themselves a profound spiritual practice. So I know for many of us, if not all of us, boundaries can feel quite challenging. We are deeply empathetic. We care about our clients and our communities. We want to be of service. We want to make a difference. And sometimes this beautiful impulse can lead us to override our own needs, our own energy levels, our own limits. And I've noticed that many of us carry a misconception that being spiritual means being endlessly available, and that having strong boundaries somehow contradicts our commitment to service and compassion. But what I've discovered is quite the opposite. Clear, loving boundaries are not an obstacle to running a spiritual business. Rather, they are essential to it. And I learned this lesson the hard way in my early years of business. I would say yes to almost every request. I would respond to messages at all hours. I would extend sessions with clients when they needed more time. I would continually override my own needs in service of others. And I was afraid to say no. I definitely had people-pleasing parts taking the lead. And I thought that was what it meant to be compassionate and generous and, quote, a good girl. And the result was pretty predictable, right? Burnout, resentment, diminished quality of my work. By trying to serve everyone all the time, I was not serving anyone well, myself especially. So the turning point came when I began to understand boundaries not as walls that separate us from others, but rather as sacred containers that allow us to show up more fully for our highest work. And in spiritual traditions around the world, sacred space is always demarcated in some way, right? Temples have walls. Rituals have opening and closing practices. Even in meditation, we create a container of time and attention that allows for deeper connection. So I began to see that my business needed these same sacred containers. By clearly defining when I worked, how I worked, what I offered, what I didn't offer, I wasn't being less spiritual or less service oriented. I was actually creating the containers for deeper, more present, soulful service. So setting a boundary around my work hours meant I could be fully present during those hours rather than partially available all the time. Clarifying what I did and didn't offer my clients helped to move me away from offering a diluted version of something that just wasn't aligned. And honoring my energy limits meant I could serve from my overflow rather than from my depletion. And as I've done this, my clients actually feel more supported, not less. And they value the clarity that I bring. They respect the container. And they receive more transformative support within these well-defined parameters. So how might you begin bringing this principle into your own business? Start by noticing where you currently feel drained or resentful, because these feelings are signposts pointing to places where a boundary is needed. And consider what specific boundaries would support your highest service. This might be around your working hours, your working days even, your response times, your scope of offerings, or how you interact with clients. Remember, boundaries can be communicated with both clarity and compassion. It's not about rigidity or coldness, but it's about creating those clear containers, those temple walls that honor everyone involved. And also connect with the parts of you that are afraid or feel guilty when you set strong boundaries. And that's going to come up. That's part of the process. And for you to be self-led, you need to learn how to soothe those parts, connect with those parts, bring awareness to them. So what I found is that when we approach boundaries as a spiritual practice, as a way of honoring the sacred in ourselves and others, they become not a limitation, but a powerful form of self-care that ultimately greatly enhances our capacity to serve. Now, the fifth and final spiritual principle I want to share with you today is about embracing devotional service through business structure. And I know this principle might be the most counterintuitive of all, especially for us who are more spiritually inclined, because there's often this idea that structure and systems are somehow the opposite of spiritual or feminine flow, that being organized, strategic, or systematic diminishes the sacred, intuitive nature of our work. But when structure is approached with intention, it can and is one of the most powerful spiritual tools in our business. So in Sanskrit, there's a beautiful concept that I love. It's called sadhana, which refers to a spiritual practice or discipline. And traditionally, sadhana wasn't just about meditation or prayer, but it was about bringing sacred attention into every aspect of your life, including your work. Now, I've come to see that the structures and systems in my business can be a form of a sadhana, a devotional practice that creates the container for my soul's highest service. So how might you begin bringing this principle into your own business? You can start by noticing where a lack of structure might actually be diminishing your sense of presence and depth in your work. Where do you feel scattered, overwhelmed, like you're constantly reinventing the wheel? These are often places where intentional structure could really support your deeper work. And consider what systems or structures would create more space for your highest gifts to shine. This might be a consistent content creation process or clear client onboarding systems, intentional rhythms, and how you plan your business calendar. Remember that structure in business doesn't have to look like conventional corporate systems. You can create structures that reflect your unique values, your energy patterns, and the specific needs of your work and your clients. And you might also explore which parts of you have resistance to structure when it comes up. Often we associate structure with past experiences of rigidity or control. And by bringing awareness to the parts of you that hold those associations, you can create new relationships with structure that feel empowering rather than constraining. And what I found is that when we approach business structure as a form of a devotional practice, as something that serves our deeper purpose rather than restricting it, our businesses truly do become more sustainable, more impactful, and more spiritually aligned. So there you have it, the 5 spiritual principles that have transformed how I approach my business. Number 1, sacred presence over perpetual productivity. Number 2, cyclical rhythm instead of linear progress. Number 3, inner wisdom above external validation. Number 4, sacred boundaries as spiritual practice. And number 5, devotional service through business structure. These principles have allowed me to create a business that doesn't just reflect my spiritual values, but it actually deepens them. My work becomes not separate from my spiritual path, but an extension of it. Now, I've shared these principles at a high level, but I know the real challenge is in the day-to-day implementation. It's one thing to conceptually understand these ideas, and it's another to actually integrate them into the real world of running a business. And that's why I created a special IFS-based workshop called The Sadhana of Business, turning your workday into your spiritual practice. Now, this intimate live gathering creates a sacred container where together we'll explore how to move beyond concepts and into embodied practice, how to truly transform your workday into a moving meditation, where every task becomes an opportunity for presence and growth. So if your workdays currently feel scattered, overwhelming, unsustainable, this workshop will help you heal the parts of you that resist structure so you can create a business rhythm that feels both aligned and productive. So in this workshop, together we'll explore how to identify the parts of you that resist structure and begin to understand what they need to feel safe and supported. Simple ways to bring more rhythm and ease into your workday without feeling restricted. Practices for focused, intentional approach to tasks that integrates both structure and intuition. Small shifts that turn everyday business activities into moments of presence and self-connection. This workshop is happening on Tuesday, March 18th, and there's a replay available if you can't join us live. You can find all the details and register through the link in the show notes or by going to sarahavansdover.com/workshop. That's sarahavansdover.com/workshop. I'm keeping this gathering intentionally small to create a container where real transformation can happen. And while a replay will be available for a limited time, I encourage you to join us live if possible, because we all know there's just something powerful about the collective energy that we create when we come together. So if something in today's episode is sticking with you, if it resonated with you, if you are feeling that call to deepen the integration between your spiritual practice and your day-to-day business operations, I would love to have you join us, because this workshop blends ancient wisdom with modern business needs, helping you cultivate a practice that serves both your practical success and your spiritual depths. Remember, it's not about adding more to your plate. It's about transforming your relationship to what is already here. So thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for being a woman who seeks to do business differently, who knows that success does not have to come at the expense of your own fulfillment. And I hope these principles offer some fresh perspective as you continue to build a business that reflects your deepest values and is aimed towards your highest purpose. And I hope to see some of you in the workshop so that we can explore some of these ideas together at a much deeper level. Until next time, I am sending you my heartfelt support. And remember that your business is not just what you do, it's a powerful vehicle for who you're becoming and the unique gifts you are here to share. Thank you for joining me today. And remember, change doesn't come from listening alone. I invite you to commit to taking one small or large, courageous action after today's conversation. One step you can take, if you haven't already, is to sign up for my Sunday journal. It's a weekly newsletter filled with inspiration and reflections about the intersection between spiritual entrepreneurship and fulfilling your potential to help you become the woman you truly are in every area of your life. You can subscribe at programs-sarahavansdover.com/journal. And if you found this podcast valuable, please share it with the women in your world. Also, I'd be very grateful if you'd leave a review. It helps others find resources like this, and I'd love to hear what's coming alive for you after listening today. Above all, keep going, and never forget the unique offerings you and your true self bring to the world. Until next time, I'm sending you my heartfelt support.